It was a cold autumn night when it all happened. I live in an old house on the outskirts of a small town, isolated by the forest. I'm a single mother of 2 children, Thomas, who is 13, and Emily, who is 8. After a long day's work, I returned home tired and burdened with grocery bags. The trees swayed in the night wind as I parked the car in the garage. A strange feeling hung in the air, as if something was about to happen. Upon entering the house, I felt an inexplicable chill. My nerves were on edge, but I brushed off the sensation as paranoia. Thomas usually messaged me when he went out with friends, so I checked my phone for any notifications. Nothing. Maybe he was studying in the dorm. The house lights were dim as I entered. I set the bags down on the kitchen floor and went upstairs to put away the groceries. While putting things away, I noticed Emily was nowhere to be seen. Strange, I thought, as she usually ran to greet me. "Emily?" I called out, but there was no response. A worry began to form in the back of my mind. After finishing with the groceries, I went upstairs to the second floor. "Emily, sweetheart?" I called again. Still no answer. My heart started beating faster. The silence of the house was deafening. The light in the second floor bathroom was on, and the door was slightly ajar. A shadow moved inside. My body froze. I pushed the door open slowly and was paralyzed by what I saw. A woman with long gray hair was bent over the sink. She turned slowly towards me, her eyes vacant and unfocused. Who are you?" My voice trembled. The woman didn't respond, just stared at me with an empty smile. My instinct screamed to get out of there. But before I could move a muscle, the woman vanished into the dark hallway. A shiver ran down my spine. I rushed to Emily's room. The bed was messy but empty. My mind was racing. Where could she have gone? The bathroom door was open, but the woman was nowhere to be found. Panic gripped me as I realized Emily was missing. Desperate, I ran downstairs and searched the house. Every shadow, every dark corner seemed to hide a secret. My phone was on the kitchen table. With trembling hands, I dialed the police. I explained the situation, my voice choked with emotion. "My daughter, she's gone." Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. When they finally did, I recounted everything I knew. I described the woman in the bathroom, but I could tell they were skeptical. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding, ma'am. We'll investigate." As the officers searched the house, my heart pounded in my chest. The thought of losing Emily was unbearable. Thomas called during the commotion, and I explained the situation frantically. He was as alarmed as I was. "Mom, I'm coming home now." Hours passed as the search continued. The police found no signs of forced entry. All windows and doors were locked. Thomas arrived home, pale with worry. Together we waited and waited, but there was no news. Dawn broke, and the police intensified the search. We combed every inch of the house and the surroundings. Neighbors were interviewed, but no one had seen anything out of the ordinary. Time seemed suspended, as if we were trapped in an endless nightmare. As the sun began to rise, my heart was shattered. The police said they would keep looking, but hopes of finding Emily dwindled with each passing moment. Sitting in the empty living room, I looked out the window, silently pleading for a miracle. That's when I heard a noise from upstairs. My heart skipped a beat. Thomas and I exchanged glances. Slowly, we climbed the stairs. The sound was coming from the second-floor bathroom. The door was closed. With nerves on edge, I pushed the door open slowly. What we found inside took our breath away. Emily was standing in front of the mirror, looking at us with empty eyes. Her hair was wet, and her clothes were dripping with water. "Emily?" My voice was a whisper. She didn't respond. Thomas approached slowly. "Emily, it's me, your brother." The girl stared at us for a moment, but something was off in her gaze. She mumbled something unintelligible and then turned back to the mirror. Her expression was vacant, as if she were in a trance. I grabbed her shoulders, shaking her gently. "Emily, what happened? Where have you been?" She blinked slowly and finally seemed to come to. I don't know. I was in a dark, cold place. I couldn't see anything." Thomas and I exchanged confused looks. What could have happened to her? The police arrived minutes later and took Emily for a medical examination. Doctors found no medical explanation for her condition. The days that followed were a haze of unanswered questions. Emily couldn't remember anything from those missing hours. We took her to therapists, specialists, but no one could explain what had happened. The woman in the kitchen, the inexplicable events. Everything remained a chilling mystery. My mind couldn't shake off that terrible night, the empty look in Emily's eyes in the mirror. Sometimes, when night fell and the house grew quiet, I heard strange noises, distant whispers. A haunting chill continued to hover over us. And so, even after months, the mystery of what happened that night was never solved. The shadow of that experience loomed over our family, leaving us ever vigilant, ever haunted by that endless night of terror. My mother has always been protective, sometimes overly so. Before I moved to another city for college, we lived in a shady neighborhood on the outskirts of New Orleans. She was a dedicated single mother, struggling to keep us safe amidst a turbulent community. But I only understood the reason behind her extreme caution much later. Growing up, I found my mother excessively controlling. She rarely let us play outside, insisted on accompanying us everywhere, and had an extreme aversion to any form of unsupervised social activity. I often wondered why she acted this way, until the day she finally opened up to me. She told me about a family that lived next door. They weren't an ordinary family, deeply involved in trafficking and heavy drug use. But it wasn't just that. They were true sadists, engaged in terrible practices that haunted our community. One particular incident stayed etched in my mother's mind and made her so super protective. They had a frightening recruitment method where they lured girls to parties and forced them to try drugs like methamphetamine. Then, they would keep them captive, feeding them drugs and exploiting them to maintain the vicious cycle of brainwashing. My mother also witnessed disturbing scenes, unconscious people being carried to cars and inexplicable disappearances in the neighborhood. She felt powerless and terrified. When I asked why she never reported it to the police, she started crying. She told me about direct threats she received from that sinister family. They had heavy weapons and boasted about being willing to confront the police in an armed standoff. My mother was afraid of losing her life and leaving us at the mercy of that rampant cruelty. Moreover, my mother, of Mexican descent, knew stories about Sana Muerte, a pagan figure linked to death. She said she heard invocations in the neighboring yard, with sounds of animals being sacrificed. The situation reached a breaking point when my mother finally managed to gather resources to move us. I was in my sophomore year of high school when we finally left that neighborhood behind. We felt an indescribable relief leaving behind the shadow of that sick family. However, the dark past seemed to follow us. In the first few months in the new city, everything seemed normal. I was relieved to be able to leave the house without feeling the constant weight of fear that had previously hung over us. But gradually, strange events began to occur. My mother started experiencing insomnia, waking up startled in the middle of the night. She told me she had disturbing dreams, seeing shadowy faces and hearing unintelligible whispers. I, too, began to have strange sensations, as if I were being watched. One day, while walking home from school, I noticed a tall figure standing on the corner, always keeping a distance but staring at me intently. It was a man in a long coat and hat, impossible to see his face. I quickly entered the house and locked the door. That night I heard noises in the garage, as if someone was rummaging through things. My mother was also restless, hearing voices whispering her name when no one else was around. It felt like we were being watched. Weeks passed, and the tension only increased. My mother isolated herself more and more, locked in her room for hours, murmuring prayers in Spanish. I tried to stay calm, but something in the air told me we were not safe. One night I woke up to a strange noise coming from the backyard. I dared to look out the window and saw shadows moving furtively. Someone was out there. Fear took hold of me. The feeling that we were the target of something sinister became overwhelming. I began to investigate on my own, seeking answers to the strange events haunting us. I discovered a connection between the current events and the dark past of that sick family next door. Rumors in the new neighborhood spoke of illicit activities, mysterious disappearances, and secret cults. As I searched online, I came across mentions of a cult dedicated to Santa Muerte, involved in obscure practices and human sacrifices. The chilling stories reminded me of my mother's narratives about those dark days in New Orleans. It haunted me so much that I decided to drop out of college and move to another state. Only then did these events cease. Thank you for watching until here. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. See you soon.